It is my wife's birthday, and the house is filled with the familiar rustle of wrapping paper and the clinking of glasses. The air smells of baked apples from the pie my daughter insisted on bringing, though she didn't even bother to ask if my wife preferred it over the chocolate cake she's always loved. The living room is crowded, siblings, cousins, neighbors, but all my eyes see is the way my son-in-law moves through the room. He carries himself like he owns the place, even though the deed of this house has never once had his name. On the table among the pile of gifts lies one package that doesn't belong. Small, wrapped in plain brown paper without a card. Yet the handwriting on the edge, the faint scrawl of my wife's name, snaps my breath short. It's a style I haven't seen in decades, shaky but familiar. For a moment I think my eyes are playing tricks on me. I press my palm against the table, feeling the texture of the wood beneath my hand, grounding myself while unease builds in my chest. Laughter rises around me, clinking glasses, forced cheer. My son-in-law clears his throat too loudly, glances at me once and smirks. He's preparing something and I can feel it. We haven't spoken more than a handful of words in weeks yet. The gap between us is a canyon-wide, cold and dangerous. Tonight, on the one evening that should belong to my wife, he looks ready to make it about me. For 3 years now, he's found small ways to humiliate me. A careless remark at dinner, a sharp insult hidden in a joke. My daughter never defends me. She sits in silence, complicit, and I endure it for the sake of my wife, who smiles as though she doesn't notice. But tonight feels different. Something in his eyes tells me he has sharpened the knife for this occasion. I sip from my glass and remind myself of the weight pressing against my chest, not just pride, not just humiliation, but the quiet danger of a man with secrets. The cruelest truths once spoken can fracture families forever. And that was only the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My wife stands near the cake, her hands clasped, glowing under the candles. Everyone sings voices uneven, but she's radiant, the kind of woman who never asked for much and gave everything in return. She closes her eyes, makes a wish, and blows out the candles. I watch her lips move the faint whisper of a prayer she doesn't share. Then the room erupts in applause. But as the candles fade into wisps of smoke, I catch sight of my son-in-law standing glass in hand. His smile is too broad, his jaw too tight. He raises his glass higher than anyone else, as though delivering a royal decree. To the most beautiful woman in the room, he begins looking at my wife. But then slowly his gaze shifts to me. The words that follow will carve a scar into this night. The ordinary gift sits untouched on the table, its brown wrapping paper dull under the yellow light. My fingertips itch to tear it open to see the truth hidden inside. But all I can do is brace myself, because I know the cruel words about to fall from his mouth will be aimed directly at me. A hush falls across the room before he even speaks. The children stop fidgeting. Even the dog, curled by the fireplace, lifts its head. The moment stretches heavy with anticipation. "Let's be honest tonight," he says, his voice sharp and smug. "Every family has a burden, and ours is sitting right here." The air is stolen from my lungs. My wife freezes. My daughter stares at her shoes. And the room, once warm with candles and laughter, turns into a cage where every eye burns into me. But I know something he doesn't. I know that the cruelest words can sometimes become the rope a man uses to hang himself. The room buzzes faintly with forced chatter after my son-in-law's cruel words, though no one seems eager to look at me directly. I keep my eyes down, fixed on the pile of gifts stacked near the cake. The laughter is thinned to nervous coughs, the kind of sound people make when they don't know where to put their shame. My wife tries to redirect the attention, thanking guests, offering slices of pie, but the shadow of his words lingers like smoke that refuses to clear. And then my gaze returns to it, that small, unremarkable package wrapped in brown paper. It doesn't belong among the flashy ribbons and glossy bags. The handwriting, though faint and slightly smudged, is unmistakable. I've seen those letters before, years ago, on a note slipped into my coat pocket during one of the hardest winters of my life. That note had read only 4 words. "You are not alone." The same shaky loops form my wife's name on this package, and for a moment my heart races faster than the clinking of forks. I reach out, brushing my fingers against the rough paper. Everyone else is busy pretending the insult never happened, so no one notices the way my hand trembles. An ordinary gift should feel like nothing, but this one feels alive, like it's holding its breath, waiting to be opened. I draw my hand back quickly, afraid someone might see the longing in my face. There's a story I once heard from an old neighbor about how in his youth, people would hide messages inside bread loaves when traveling through dangerous regions. The bread was ordinary, but inside it carried secrets of survival. Looking at this package now, I can't help but think of that story. An ordinary wrapping, but perhaps something extraordinary within. I glance across the table and catch my granddaughter watching me. She's too young to know the full weight of betrayal, but her eyes seem sharper than her years. She tilts her head toward the package, then quickly looks away. Did she notice it too? Or is it just my own desperation? Painting meaning where there is none? My son-in-law is still basking in his false victory, making shallow jokes with his friends, his laugh too loud, too forced. He doesn't see it, the tiny box that could undo the balance he believes he controls. He has always measured me by what I don't show: the small house, the old clothes, the quietness. He never once considered that silence can be a weapon. I shift in my chair, the wooden leg creaking beneath me, and force myself to wait. Opening it now would invite more ridicule, more sneers about how I cling to scraps. Timing is everything. Silence has its own way of speaking. And yet, even as I hesitate, my mind drifts back to the early years with my wife. The nights when we counted every coin, when she mended the same coat over and over, when neighbors looked at us with pity. Back then, I promised myself that one day when fortune turned, I would never let anyone humiliate her again. I thought I had kept that promise. Until tonight. The gift sits there patient and unassuming, but I know it holds a truth that could tilt this night upside down. My son-in-law believes he has silenced me, branded me the family's shame, but in that small package lies either salvation or another wound waiting to open. I lift my glass to my lips, pretending to drink while my mind churns. My wife notices my distraction. She touches my arm lightly, her perfume faintly sweet, and whispers, "Are you all right?" I nod, though we both know it's a lie. She doesn't ask again. Perhaps she already suspects the storm hasn't even started. The chatter around us begins to rise again, shallow attempts to plaster over the cruelty that still hangs in the air. But my focus stays locked on that package. It's ordinary, yes, but ordinary things often hide the extraordinary. Just as a withered seed can split into a towering tree, or an old scar can reopen with a single word. My hand itches to grab it, to tear away the paper, to reveal its secret to all. But instinct tells me to wait. The right moment will come, and when it does, it will not be me who turns pale. I thought the cruel words were the blow that would break me. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The small brown package remains on the table untouched, yet it pulls at me as if it carries the weight of my whole life. I try to steady my breathing, but the handwriting scrawled across its side drags me backward in time. Suddenly, I'm no longer seated in a crowded living room with candles fading into smoke. I'm 25 years old again, standing in a cold room where the walls seem to lean in and hunger pressed against our ribs like a second skeleton. I remember my wife's face then, young, determined, yet weary from nights spent stitching clothes for neighbors to earn just enough for bread. We didn't have birthday parties back then, not like this. No laughter echoing off the walls, no polished wine glasses clinking together. Instead, we shared a single candle stuck in a piece of cornbread, whispering wishes we were too afraid to say aloud. One night, after a neighbor mocked me for failing to provide more, I found a slip of paper tucked into my jacket pocket. 4 shaky words. "You are not alone." My wife's handwriting. That simple note carried me through years of insults, through stares of pity when we couldn't afford what others flaunted. I held it like a talisman. Seeing those same loops on tonight's package, older, shakier, but undeniably hers, reopens all the scars that time had only half healed. The present blurs with memory. I hear echoes of the laughter from decades ago, cruel laughter that sounded so much like my son-in-law's tonight. Different voices, same venom. Poverty has a way of making people cruel. It gives them permission to measure your worth in coins rather than in sacrifices. I look at my hands. They are rough-lined with years of work no one noticed. These are the same hands that built the crib where my daughter once slept, the same hands that lifted bags of cement when neighbors said I was too weak, the same hands that now tremble as I remember the price of silence. My wife moves gracefully through the room, thanking guests, though I can see in her eyes the storm she hides. She hasn't forgotten those lean years either. The lines near her mouth are not just from age, but from swallowing words she wanted to speak but dared not. Tonight, once again, she swallows. The package becomes more than paper and string. It is a mirror reflecting every year we fought to survive, every humiliation endured in silence. And now my son-in-law's cruel words, the family burden, press against those memories like salt on a wound. I recall a proverb my grandmother used to say, "The river that forgets its source will one day dry." My son-in-law may think himself clever, powerful even, but he forgets that the very roof above his head was once raised by these worn hands. Forgetfulness breeds arrogance, and arrogance always falls hardest. Around me, conversation tries to push forward. Someone laughs too loudly, someone else claps a child on the back as though noise could erase what was spoken. But silence has its own way of speaking. I sit with it, let it breathe, and in that silence I hear the ghosts of all my yesterdays. I glance at the package once more. Perhaps it is nothing but an old friend's gesture. Or perhaps it is proof that the sacrifices of a lifetime were not forgotten. Either way, it has already opened a door in my mind that my son-in-law never expected me to walk through tonight. I thought memory would weaken me, but instead it sharpens something inside me. Betrayal echoes, yes, but so does endurance. The past does not fade, it waits. And when it returns, it always asks for a reckoning. I thought I was drowning in humiliation tonight, but I was wrong. The clatter of forks against porcelain plates tries to fill the silence, but it doesn't. No amount of laughter or chatter can wash away the sting of my son-in-law's words. His voice still hangs in the air like smoke after a fire, sharp, bitter, impossible to ignore. Everyone at the table pretends not to notice, but their eyes betray them. Some flicker toward me, then quickly away. Others linger too long as though waiting for me to break. My daughter shifts uncomfortably, her hand resting on her glass but never lifting it. She doesn't defend me. She never does. Instead, she stares into the red wine as if it might give her an escape route. I wonder if she's ashamed or if she silently agrees with him. The thought burns more than his insult. Across from me, my granddaughter fidgets with her napkin. She's young, but she feels the tension more keenly than the adults. Children always do. They may not understand every word, but they understand the weight of silence, the way it thickens the air, until every breath feels stolen. She glances at me, her lips parting as if she wants to speak, but then she presses them tight, folding the napkin into smaller and smaller pieces instead. The candles flicker, bending shadows across the walls. My wife forces a smile as she cuts slices of cake, her knife slipping slightly on the frosting. Her voice trembles when she offers a piece to her sister, and I catch the quick flash of her eyes, pleading, tired, afraid of another scene. She has always been the peacekeeper, but peace is a fragile thing when built on silence. My son-in-law leans back in his chair, smug, satisfied, like a man who believes he has won something. He jokes with the cousin beside him, his laughter too loud, his teeth bared like a predator that has tasted blood. I watch him closely. He avoids my gaze, but every gesture of his body speaks arrogance. He believes I am beaten, humiliated, diminished in front of everyone. But humiliation does not break me, it hardens me. The air is thick with unspoken words. Every family gathering has its fractures, but tonight they gape wide. I see them in the averted glances and the forced smiles, in the way no one asks me to speak. My presence has been reduced to a shadow at my own wife's table. A memory flickers years ago at another family dinner when a neighbor ridiculed me for failing to buy enough food. That same suffocating silence had filled the room then too. Only my wife's hand on mine had kept me from leaving. Tonight her hand is busy serving others, and I sit alone inside the silence. The gift remains on the table, a quiet witness. Its plain wrapping makes it invisible to others, but not to me. My eyes keep drifting back to it as though it's breathing with me, as though it knows the weight of the moment. It anchors me, reminding me that there may still be another side to this night. I swirl the wine in my glass but don't drink. My throat is too tight. Around me, the room continues to perform its false play of normalcy laughter that doesn't touch the eyes. Compliments about the cake, talk about the weather. But beneath it all, tension thrums like a string pulled too tight, ready to snap. I realize something then. Silence is not just absence, it is choice. And every person here has chosen silence over truth. I thought this dinner had reached its most bitter moment, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. My son-in-law lifts his glass again, though no toast is needed, no one asked for one. The chatter dims as if the whole room knows instinctively that something cruel is about to be served. His voice slices through the uneasy laughter, steady, deliberate, like a man rehearsing a speech he's been eager to give. "I think it's time," he says, pausing long enough to let eyes turn his way. Time we stop pretending. He doesn't look at my wife, not at my daughter, not at the candles that have melted into crooked stubs. His gaze is fixed on me. This family, he continues, has carried a burden for too long. We smile, we celebrate, but behind closed doors we all know the truth. He swirls his wine, savoring the moment. The burden is sitting right here. His finger doesn't need to point. Every face already turns toward me. The words are not new. I've heard them whispered in different ways before, at workplaces where promotions passed me by, in neighborhoods where people judged by the car I couldn't afford, at gatherings where silence greeted my presence. But tonight, in front of my wife, in front of the children, he gives them sharp edges, carves them into something public. My daughter shifts in her chair. She doesn't speak. She never speaks. Her silence cuts deeper than his accusation. My wife freezes, knife in hand, a slice of cake poised midair, as though time itself has been held hostage. The room holds its breath. I feel the weight of every eye pressing against me. The sting of humiliation climbs my throat, threatening to choke me. My first instinct is to defend myself, to shout, to remind everyone of the years I carried this family, the sacrifices they've long forgotten. But then I see my granddaughter's wide eyes filled not with pity but with worry. She is too young to understand betrayal, but she knows cruelty when she hears it. Her gaze anchors me. I put my glass down slowly. The wood beneath it groans, a sound that somehow feels louder than his words. I sit straighter, though inside I tremble. Humiliation is a storm, but storms pass. My son-in-law leans forward, emboldened by my silence. You take and take, but what have you given? What have you built? You live in this house, but it isn't yours. You eat this food, but you didn't pay for it. All you bring is shame. The cruelty lands like blows, each one carefully chosen. I see nods, small guilty nods from relatives who may not agree, but who also do not rise to stop him. Silence, once again, is complicity. I swallow hard, the taste of iron in my mouth, though no blood has been drawn. I look at my wife. Her eyes shine with unshed tears, but still she says nothing. She has been trained by years of keeping peace, and peace tonight demands her silence. My humiliation is complete, yet beneath it something stirs. A memory, a locked drawer, a bank book no one knows about, the small package with its familiar handwriting. Shadows of secrets that once revealed will turn his smug smile into ash. But not yet. For now, I let his words hang in the air, heavy and cruel. I let them mark the room, etching themselves into the memory of everyone present. Because when the truth arrives, it will cut deeper than any insult he could ever craft. I thought his words were the final cruelty, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. After his words fade, the room doesn't return to its chatter. No one raises a glass. No one laughs. The air itself seems to thicken, pressing down on us heavy and suffocating. Silence stretches across the table, not the gentle kind that follows a prayer or a moment of gratitude, but the jagged silence of shame, of fear, of complicity. My wife lowers the knife she had been holding, sets it down with deliberate care, as if any sudden movement might shatter the fragile stillness. She doesn't look at me, nor at him. Her eyes rest on the cake, frosting melting into a slow collapse, a celebration ruined before the first bite. My daughter shifts in her chair, fumbles with her glass, and finally takes a sip she doesn't need. Her hands tremble. I search her face for loyalty, for anger, for anything. But all I see is the emptiness of someone too afraid to choose a side. Across from me, my granddaughter has stopped tearing her napkin. Her small fists are clenched now, pressed into her lap. She bites her lip, and I can tell she wants to say something, but the weight of adult silence holds her tongue prisoner. She looks at me with eyes that silently beg me not to break. The others, the cousins, the neighbors, the distant relatives shift uncomfortably, pretending to fuss with their plates. Not one voice rises to defend me. Their silence is an agreement sealed without words, better to let me bleed than to invite his wrath upon themselves. And there he sits, my son-in-law, leaned back smug, savoring the silence as though it's applause. He believes he's won. He believes humiliation is the same as defeat. But I know better. There is an old saying from my childhood village, silence can be sharper than a knife. In that silence, I feel something stir inside me. Not anger, not yet, but resolve. A slow, steady flame rising in the dark corners of my chest. I glance at the small brown package still resting on the table. Unopened, ignored, ordinary. To everyone else, it is nothing. To me, it is everything. The handwriting on it whispers across decades, reminding me that humiliation can be endured if you know a truth no one else suspects. I sip from my glass, though my throat is dry. The wine tastes sour, metallic, but I let it linger. I want them to see me calm. I want them to mistake my silence for surrender, Because when the storm turns, the calm before it will make the thunder strike twice as hard. The clock ticks on the wall, each sound like a hammer. My wife closes her eyes briefly, and when she opens them again, they are full of water. Still, she doesn't speak. She has learned the cruel lesson of survival. Sometimes silence is safer than truth. But I'm not done with silence, not yet. I thought their silence was my abandonment. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The silence at the table presses me backward into memory the way a wave pulls a swimmer under. I close my eyes for only a moment, but in that moment, I'm no longer surrounded by candles and whispers. I'm young again, standing beneath the weight of years that no one here seems to remember. I see my hands blistered from hauling bricks. My shoulders bent from carrying sacks of grain across fields that weren't mine. I hear the cough that rattled my chest through winters when I worked long hours outdoors, too poor for medicine, too proud to beg. My wife stitched clothes by lantern light, her fingers bleeding through the needle so that our daughter could walk to school in something presentable. We gave her shoes while we walked barefoot. We ate scraps so she could eat full meals. There was a year when the rain didn't stop, when the river swelled and drowned half the crops. I remember standing knee-deep in mud salvaging what little was left while neighbors muttered that we would never recover. Yet somehow we did. Not because fortune favored us, but because we refused to surrender. And birthdays. Birthdays were not tables heavy with food and guests. They were quiet nights, with a candle stuck into bread, whispered wishes spoken into the dark. My wife and I would sit across from each other, promising silently that we would make it through one more year, no matter how heavy the burden. I think of the time our daughter fell ill, fever burning through her small body. I walked miles to the clinic because we couldn't afford a car. I carried her in my arms until my legs nearly gave way. The doctor said she might not make it through the night, but she did. Because we stayed awake, cooling her forehead with wet cloths, praying with every breath. All of these moments, all of these sacrifices are carved into me like scars only I can feel. Yet here tonight in this room, my son-in-law dares to call me a burden. He sits in comfort built on foundations he never lays, sneering at the very hands that made his comforts possible. There's a bitterness in that thought, but also a strange strength. For while he speaks of shame, I carry memory, and memory is heavier than gold. A fragment of an old tale comes back to me, one my father used to tell. A tree bends under the weight of snow, but when spring comes, it rises again. I have bent, I have bowed, but I have not broken. I open my eyes again. The room is unchanged yet different, because now I see them all through the lens of my sacrifices. My wife weary but loyal, my daughter silent because she has forgotten what was given for her, my granddaughter trembling with the knowledge that something is wrong even if she cannot name it, and my son-in-law blind in his arrogance, believing that humiliation is victory. He doesn't know the truth that sacrifice breeds a strength deeper than pride. I run my thumb along the rim of my glass, steady calm. I let them think I am swallowed by shame. But inside, my memories stand like an army behind me, reminding me of every battle I've already fought and survived. I thought sacrifice would leave me empty. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The weight of memory lingers in my chest as I return to the present. Around me, the guests stir, clearing throats, shifting cutlery, pretending that nothing has been said. But I know their ears are still ringing with my son-in-law's words. My wife sits across from me, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her back straighter than usual. Her eyes stay fixed on the cake in front of her, though she has already served everyone. I know her well enough to read the tension in her posture, the way her fingers knot together, the way her jaw tightens, even as her lips curve into a smile. She has always been the keeper of peace, the one who smooths quarrels before they erupt. Through every hardship, she found ways to soften the blows. When neighbors mocked us, she laughed it off. When our daughter cried from hunger, she distracted her with stories. She has worn silence like a garment for so long that speaking against it would feel like undressing in front of strangers. But tonight her silence trembles. When she finally looks at me, her eyes glisten. It isn't pity I see there. It's fear. Fear that this celebration meant to honor her has been turned into a battlefield. Fear that if she speaks, the fragile thread holding this family together will snap. I want to tell her not to carry that weight. I want to tell her I've endured heavier burdens, that humiliation cannot kill me. But I don't. Because I know her silence is her way of protecting me, or perhaps protecting herself. My son-in-law notices her stillness and mistakes it for support. He chuckles, leans closer to his friends, and mutters something about truth finally being spoken. His arrogance fills the room like sour smoke. My wife grips her glass, her knuckles white. She takes a sip of wine and sets it down carefully, but the glass trembles as it touches the table. Her sister places a hand on her shoulder, murmuring comfort. My wife nods, forces another smile, but her eyes flicker back to me, desperate searching. In that glance I see her torn apart loyalty, pulling her one way, fear pulling her another. She knows what I have given, what I have carried. She knows the sacrifices that built the roof over our heads, the education that lifted our daughter, the nights when she herself survived only because I refused to give up. But she also knows the cost of speaking in a room full of silence. She presses her napkin against her lips as though hiding the words she cannot say aloud. The napkin trembles slightly, betraying what her mouth refuses to reveal. I want to reach across the table to take her hand to anchor her. But I stop myself. Not yet. Timing matters more than comfort tonight, and the small brown package still rests on the table, waiting like a sealed promise. The silence around us feels louder than any insult. My wife's reaction is not the outburst I longed for, but the quiet endurance I expected. Yet within her eyes is a question, not will you endure this, but when will you rise? I thought her silence was her surrender, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. While the room swims in silence, my thoughts slip toward the drawer in my study, the one no one ever bothers to open. Inside it lies an old bank book, worn at the corners, its cover faded from decades of handling. To anyone else it looks ordinary, another relic of a past life. But to me, it holds the story. No one here knows the story of every sacrifice transformed into something that cannot be mocked. I remember the day I opened that account. My hands were still raw from work, my shirt damp with sweat when the banker slid the little book across the counter. I'd tucked away just enough to start. It wasn't much, barely enough to matter then, but I promised myself that no matter what storms came, I would keep feeding that book coin by coin, hour by hour, year by year. Through sickness and recovery, through lean seasons and better ones, I kept that promise. My wife knew pieces of it, but never the whole. Even she believed sometimes that we were scraping by without safety. Perhaps I let her believe it. Perhaps I thought if even she underestimated me, then no one else would ever suspect. And now sitting here while my son-in-law's insult still burns in the air, I know why I kept it secret. Because power revealed too soon loses its edge. But power revealed at the right moment can silence a room. I glance again at the brown-wrapped package. My heart whispers that it might be connected, a reminder, a trigger, a signal that the time has finally come to stop carrying the weight of silence. The handwriting on it matches the one that once gave me strength. You are not alone. Perhaps whoever sent this knows. Perhaps they want me to remember that truth now when I need it most. I look at my son-in-law. He's laughing again, pouring himself more wine, his arrogance stretching wider now that no one has challenged him. He doesn't see the storm that waits in the drawer of my study. He doesn't see the numbers inked into that bank book, the quiet fortune he mocks because he thinks I have nothing. He doesn't realize the humiliation he spits onto me tonight may be the very rope that drags him down tomorrow. There's a saying I once read in a newspaper, something a wealthy man had told his son. Money whispers, but silence shouts. Tonight my silence shouts louder than he can imagine. I wrap my fingers around my glass, steadying them, hiding the tremor that threatens to betray my thoughts. I could end this now. I could rise from my chair, fetch that book, and slam it onto the table for all to see. But no, not yet. Timing is everything. Let him laugh. Let him believe he has broken me. Let the others avert their eyes, thinking me powerless. For when the truth is unveiled, its weight will crush not me but him. I thought the secret was only mine to keep. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The room seems to have settled into a false calm, the kind that comes after a storm, but before the next wave. My son-in-law has resumed his laughing, clinking glasses with those too timid to defy him. My wife busies herself with refilling plates. No one asked for a desperate attempt to keep the evening afloat. The candles burn shorter, their flames shivering in the drafts that slip through the old windows. I remain still watching, listening, my silence wrapped around me like armor. Beneath that armor, though, the pulse of the secret bank book and the brown-wrapped package beats steady, waiting for its moment. That is when I feel a small tug at my sleeve. I glance down, and there is my granddaughter, her face half hidden by the fall of her hair. Her voice is barely more than breath, but it reaches me clearer than any shout. "Grandpa, don't answer him, not yet." The words freeze me. For a heartbeat, I cannot move. She looks up, her eyes wide, glistening with something between fear and certainty. Children notice what adults miss. They hear the currents beneath the surface, the words people try to swallow. I lean slightly toward her, my own whisper low. Why not? Her little fingers twist in the fabric of my jacket. Because I heard him earlier, in the kitchen. He said tonight wasn't just about words. A chill slips down my spine. I study her face, too young to invent such a warning, too honest to lie. Don't answer yet, she repeats, then pulls back as if the weight of her words frightens her. She picks up her fork, pretends to play with her cake, but her hands tremble just enough for me to notice. I look across the table at my son-in-law. He is laughing again, but now I notice the way his eyes dart to me every so often, checking, measuring, as though waiting for me to take the bait. His cruelty wasn't just for humiliation, it was provocation. He wants me to explode, to lash out, to make myself the villain in this story. And my granddaughter, sharper than all the adults here, has seen it. The silence in the room now feels different, less like shame, more like trap. My wife's stiff posture, my daughter's anxious, sipping, the relatives' nervous glances, all of it folds into a picture I had not noticed before. He wants me cornered. He wants me to reveal too much too soon. But I will not. I smooth my sleeve where her fingers had clutched. I nod ever so slightly, letting her know I heard, I understood. Her shoulders ease just a fraction. An old saying surfaces in my mind, one my mother used to repeat when she caught me rushing. The fruit that ripens too early is sour. Tonight I will wait. I will let his arrogance swell until it bursts under its own weight. I raise my glass again, sip slowly, and meet his eyes across the table. I smile, not a warm smile, but one sharpened at the edges. He doesn't notice the difference. He thinks I'm still broken. Let him think it. I thought her whisper was just a child's fear. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The hum of uneasy conversation limps along, fragile as thin glass. Forks scrape plates, glasses clink. My son-in-law continues his loud performance, filling the room with the sound of victory. He mistakes silence for surrender, as bullies always do. And then ding-dong! The sound of the doorbell cuts through the night like a blade. It startles the children, makes my wife's knife slip against porcelain with a sharp scrape. Conversations halt mid-word. Even my son-in-law stiffens for a second before covering it with another grin. "Who else is coming?" someone mutters. No one answers. My wife rises quickly, dabbing her hands on her apron, though there is no flour, no oil, no reason for the gesture except nerves. She walks to the door, her steps hurried but uncertain. For a moment, the only sound is the creak of the floorboards beneath her feet. She opens the door, and there, framed in the yellow light of the porch, stands a man. An old family friend, though no one expected him tonight. His hair is streaked with gray, his suit slightly rumpled from travel. In his hands he holds a folder thick with papers bound by a single string. "Forgive me," he says, his voice carrying into the room, polite but firm. "I know I wasn't invited, but I had to come." A ripple moves through the guests. Some whisper his name, others exchange puzzled glances. My wife steps aside instinctively, allowing him to enter, though confusion clouds her face. My son-in-law forces a laugh. "Well, well, more guests? The more the merrier, isn't that right?" His cheer is false, his eyes darting to the folder in the man's hands. The friend's gaze, however, does not rest on him. It comes straight to me. And in that gaze, steady and deliberate, I sense that his arrival is not coincidence. He walks forward, ignoring the awkward silence, and places the folder on the table in front of me. "For you," he says quietly. My fingers rest on the string, but I do not untie it. Not yet. The weight of the folder is heavy, far heavier than its paper should allow. My chest tightens with the certainty that inside lies something that could shift this night, this family, this story. My wife returns to her seat, her face pale. My daughter looks between me and her husband, torn, uncertain. My granddaughter leans forward, eyes wide, sensing that the air has changed again. And my son-in-law, he hides his unease poorly. His smirk wavers. His fingers tap against his glass, too fast, too loud. He knows whatever is inside this folder, it is not for him. The room is gone still once more, but this silence is no longer heavy with humiliation. It is heavy with expectation. I thought the knock on the door was an interruption, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The folder sits before me, like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through the room no one dares to acknowledge. Its string is tied in a simple knot, but the weight behind it feels anything but simple. I keep my hands on the table just inches away, resisting the urge to untie it. Sometimes anticipation is more powerful than revelation. The air thickens. Every guest pretends to carry on, but their eyes keep sliding back to the folder. My wife straightens in her chair, hands folded tightly, her knuckles pale. My daughter looks as though she wants to ask what's inside, but her husband's presence clamps her silence. My granddaughter leans forward slightly, her breath held. And my son-in-law, he tries to play it off with another laugh, but it falls flat. He pours himself more wine, though the glass is already half full, his movements sharper, less fluid. His eyes flick toward the folder again and again, betraying the unease he's trying to bury. "Strange gift for a birthday party," he says, finally chuckling. "What is it, more bills?" An old receipt. His attempt at humor doesn't land. No one laughs. The silence afterward slices sharper than his earlier cruelty. I rest my fingertips lightly on the folder, not opening it, simply claiming it. A pulse of memory flows through me. Years of sacrifice, of secrets kept, of careful patience. This folder feels like the physical shape of all those years condensed into paper and ink. The family friend who delivered it sits quietly in the corner, our hands folded as though his task is complete. His gaze remains steady on me, offering no explanation, no comfort, only the weight of his presence reminding me that whatever is in here is mine to reveal or to withhold. The candles flicker again, one flame sputtering out entirely. My wife notices, reaches for a match, but stops midway. Her eyes shift back to the folder as though she knows the paper inside holds more fire than any candle. I let the silence stretch. There is power in waiting. My son-in-law squirms under it, his smirk tugging at the edges but never quite reaching his eyes. He clears his throat too loudly. "Go on then. If it's important, open it. Let's not waste everyone's time." His eagerness betrays him. He wants it revealed, but only because he fears it. He's desperate to control the moment, to frame it as trivial before it can destroy him. I tap the folder lightly with my finger, once the sound echoing in the hush. The guests shift in their seats, their attention hanging on that small sound. The room feels less like a party now and more like a courtroom, everyone waiting for the verdict. The papers are still tied, silent, patient, but silence has its own way of speaking. I thought the folder would explain itself, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The folder sits untouched in front of me, its string knot like a sealed mouth daring me to untie it. The room leans toward it, though no one speaks of it aloud. Even the children have gone still, their fidgeting hushed by the weight of unspoken tension. And then there it is again, my son-in-law's smirk. It spreads slowly across his face, tugging one corner of his lips upward, a practiced mask of confidence. He leans back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other, wineglass dangling from his hand as if he were holding court. His smirk is not joy, it is armor. A thin, fragile armor covering unease he doesn't want anyone to see. "Really," he says, voice dripping with mockery. "Are we all going to sit here staring at a pile of paper? It's nothing. Just some silly distraction." He gestures dismissively, but his eyes don't leave the folder. His pupils are too sharp, too fixed. The smirk doesn't reach them. I watch him carefully. I've seen that expression before on men at job sites who bragged loudest right before their mistakes brought everything crashing down. The louder the laughter, the deeper the fear beneath it. Around the table, the reactions vary. My daughter stares at him, her face pale confusion etched into her brow. She doesn't understand why her husband feels threatened, but she senses it. My wife, quiet and composed, presses her napkin tighter in her lap. Her silence speaks louder than her words ever could. My granddaughter peers at him, unblinking, her small fingers clutching the edge of the table as though she knows instinctively that his smirk is a mask about to crack. He takes another sip of wine, swallowing too quickly. Honestly, it's insulting, isn't it? Bringing business, or whatever this is, into a celebration. His smirk widens, teeth showing now, but it has forced the grin of a man trapped in his own performance. I don't answer. I simply rest my hand lightly on the folder. The gesture is small, but it shifts the balance. His smirk falters for just an instant, a flicker like a flame guttering in the wind. He covers it quickly with another laugh, but I saw it, and I know others did too. In that tiny crack, I glimpse the truth. He is afraid, not of me perhaps, but of what might be inside. Afraid that the ground he stands on is thinner than he pretends. I lean back in my chair, mirroring his posture, but without the whine, without the smirk. Just calm, steady silence. His eyes twitch. The smirk stays, but it strains at the edges, trembling under the weight of the unknown. The folder doesn't need to be opened yet. For now, it's enough that it sits there between us, a quiet reminder that the story of this family is not his to control. I thought his smirk meant confidence, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The folder lies still beneath my hand, its weight both ordinary and immense. My son-in-law's smirk lingers, but I can see the muscles in his jaw twitch, the faint crack in his armor. Around us, the guests hover between curiosity and dread, their eyes darting from him to me to the string that keeps the folder closed. I breathe slowly. Timing matters. The wrong word too soon and I become the fool. But the right word at the right moment that can shift the room. I pull the folder closer, dragging it across the table with a soft scrape. The sound makes several guests flinch. My wife stiffens her lips, parting slightly, as though she wants to tell me to wait. My granddaughter leans forward, eyes bright, her earlier warning echoing in my mind. I loosen the string. Not completely, just enough to slip one page free. The papers whisper as they shift. I pull the top sheet into the light. Gasps ripple through the room. The page is not complicated. No secret code, no mystery. Just an official letterhead stamped and sealed. Property records, my name at the top, my signature at the bottom. Black ink against white paper, undeniable. My son-in-law's smirk twitches, falters. His wine glass tips, slightly spilling a drop onto the tablecloth. He covers it with a chuckle. Old papers, he scoffs. Meaningless. Anyone can print that. But his voice is too quick, too sharp. The guests hear it. They exchange glances, whispers under their breath. My daughter stares at the page as though she's never seen my name before. I don't say a word. I simply lay the paper flat on the table, the seal catching the light, letting silence do what words cannot. My wife lowers her gaze, her lashes trembling. She knows now that the quiet life I've carried has roots deeper than anyone suspected. She grips her glass tighter as if holding onto something solid while the ground shifts beneath her. I slide the rest of the folder back toward me, tying the string loosely again. Just one glimpse, one taste of what lies inside. Enough to seed doubt, enough to turn the smirk on his lips into something brittle. The silence in the room feels different now. No longer heavy with shame, but charged with possibility. I thought one page would calm them. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The single sheet of paper rests on the table like a flame, and the whole room leans toward its glow. My name, bold and undeniable, burns through the silence more powerfully than any speech I could have given. No one dares to touch it, yet everyone feels its weight. Across from me, my wife's face changes. The smile she has been wearing, tight, polite, strained, slips away. Her hands tremble where they rest on her lap, her napkin crumpling into a ball. She stares at the page, her lips pressed together so firmly they have lost all color. I know that look. I have seen it in smaller moments, hidden in kitchens and hallways when she wanted to speak, but swallowed her words instead. Tonight, the choice is tearing her apart. Her sister leans close, whispering something meant to soothe, but my wife doesn't respond. Her gaze flicks between me and the page, then to our daughter, then hesitantly to her son-in-law. The conflict in her eyes is raw, impossible to disguise. She has lived her life as a bridge, between neighbors and quarrels, between daughter and father, between silence and truth. But bridges strain when too much weight is placed upon them, and tonight the weight has become unbearable. I catch her eyes for the briefest moment. In them, I see gratitude for the proof that I am not the burden he claims. I also see fear for what this revelation will unleash. And beneath it all, I see exhaustion, the kind that comes from decades of carrying peace like a heavy stone. She finally speaks, her voice trembling, but audible. Enough, she says softly. It isn't a declaration, not yet. More a plea, a whispered hope that someone will step back from the brink. But no one moves. My son-in-law laughs too loud, too forced. You see, even she wants this nonsense to end. He gestures toward her, as though claiming her silence as his ally. But he doesn't notice the way her hands clutch the napkin, twisting it until it nearly tears. Her silence is not consent. It is survival, and tonight it is failing her. I want to reach across the table to tell her that she no longer has to carry this role, that the truth has its own strength. But I hold back. Because the time to speak fully has not yet come. The truth must be revealed in layers, each sharper than the last. She lowers her eyes, tears glistening at the corners, and for a moment the entire room feels her fracture. Everyone sees her pain, though. No one acknowledges it. My granddaughter shifts uncomfortably, sensing more than she understands. My daughter stares at her mother, torn, but still unmoving. And my wife, my steadfast wife, sits in silence, her heart divided between protecting me and protecting the fragile illusion of peace she has kept alive for years. I thought her breaking point had come. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The room teeters on the edge of collapse. My wife's soft plea of enough still hangs in the air, fragile as glass, yet unanswered. The paper on the table lies like a blade, and though no one touches it, everyone feels its sharpness. My son-in-law shifts forward, suddenly abandoning his lounging posture. The smirk is gone now, replaced by a hard edge in his voice. Don't be fooled. he says, his tone louder, sharper, as though volume might undo the truth inked on that page. Old record scraps of paper, none of it matters. What matters is the here and now, and right now this man is nothing but dead weight. The guests stir uncomfortable. Some glance toward the door as if wondering if they should leave. My daughter finally looks up, her lips parting, but no words come. She stares at her husband, then at me, torn between the two men who define her world. He presses harder, his voice rising. You think owning a few lines on a page makes him useful, makes him worthy? He's lived off others for years. He sits here while we provide, while we carry everything, and you all know it. The volume rattles the glasses. His face reddens, veins bulging in his neck. He is no longer mocking. He is raging. Rage has stripped away the polished charm he wears in public. What remains is raw, bitter, ugly. My wife flinches with every word, her fingers digging into the fabric of her skirt. My granddaughter grips my sleeve under the table, her small hand trembling, her warning echoing again in my mind, don't answer yet. But silence grows heavier with every second. I study him closely. His desperation is showing now, masked poorly as confidence. He wants me to rise, to shout, to break the calm that unsettles him more than anything else. His power has always thrived on control, controlling the narrative, controlling the room, controlling my daughter. But control slips like sand through his fingers tonight. Say something, he finally bellows, slamming his hand against the table. Plates jump, wine spills. The children gasp. His voice rings against the walls. Admit it. Admit you're nothing without us. The room is frozen. My daughter's face crumples, torn between husband and father. My wife's tears finally spill, silent but unstoppable. And still I sit in calm silence, my hand resting on the folder, my eyes steady on his. I breathe in slowly, tasting the bitterness of his desperation. He believes he is forcing me into a corner. What he doesn't realize is that every shout, every insult, every drop of venom is a rope he is tightening around his own neck. There is a saying I once heard from a carpenter on a job site long ago. Wood splits not from the hammer's force, but from the crack already within it. Tonight his voice is the hammer, and the crack in his own arrogance is widening. I thought his rage was the storm's peak, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. His hand still trembles on the table from the force of his outburst, the echo of his demand, admit you're nothing without us, still clinging to the air. My wife dabs at her tears. My daughter sits frozen, and the guests stare at their plates as though words might hide in the pattern of porcelain. I remain still. My silence infuriates him more than any retort could. His rage feeds on reaction, and I give him none. Instead, I untie the string of the folder once more, slowly, deliberately. The sound of paper shifting seems louder than his shouts. I draw out another page heavier than the first, stamped with ink that cannot be mocked away. I place it on the table. The candlelight glints off its seal. This time no one gasps. They are too stunned for sound. Eyes widen. My daughter leans forward, her face paling. My wife clasps her hands tighter, lips parted. The document is clear, the deed to the very house we sit in. My name again etched across it, the signature dated years before my son-in-law even stepped into this family. He stares at it. His smirk has vanished, replaced by something jagged and raw. No, he mutters, almost to himself. That's impossible. This house? He stops, realizing the words betray his fear. He tries to laugh, but it catches in his throat. Forgeries. He spits too quickly. Cheap tricks. But the guests are not convinced. I hear their whispers ripple across the table. His name's right there, stamped, years ago. They glance at me with new eyes, and at him with doubt. My daughter's voice finally breaks through, small and shaking. Mom, Dad, is this true? She doesn't look at her husband. She looks at me, and in that look I see the first fracture in her loyalty to him. My wife cannot speak. Her tears roll silently, but her eyes lock with mine, filled with both sorrow and relief. Sorrow that the piece she's held together is shattering, relief that the truth she's carried in silence is finally stepping into light. I say nothing. I do not need to. The page speaks for me. My son-in-law grips his wine glass so tightly I fear it will shatter in his hand. His face is red, not with triumph, but with panic clawing at his composure. There is an old proverb. Paper is thin, but it can cover mountains. Tonight, this thin page covers years of sacrifice, shielding me from the blade of his cruelty. I thought revealing the house deed would end the fight, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The deed to the house lies open on the table, its official seal gleaming under candlelight. The whispers around the room grow louder, restless, like wind building before a storm. My son-in-law shifts in his chair, his smirk long gone, his jaw clenched so tightly the veins on his neck bulge. He keeps glancing at my daughter, at the guests, at the paper, as if his glare alone could burn the ink away. But I am not finished. With deliberate calm, I untie the folder once more. The sound of the string sliding loose feels like thunder in the silence. I slide out another sheet, thicker this time, the edges worn with age. I lay it flat beside the deed. A collective gasp rises. Even my wife inhales sharply, her hand flying to her mouth. It is an inheritance document. Funds placed in trust years ago, quietly, steadily growing while no one looked. My name written again, my wife's beside it, and a number at the bottom that still makes my own heart tighten, even though I have known it for years. Enough to change everything. Enough to ensure no one in this room could ever call me worthless again. The guests lean closer. Some murmur prayers, others stare in open shock. My daughter clutches the edge of the table, her knuckles white. She looks at me as though seeing me for the first time, as though the man she dismissed as silent, ordinary, powerless has transformed before her eyes. My wife breaks into tears, not from grief but from the release of a burden she has carried for too long. She knew pieces of this truth, but not the full weight. For years she bore the silence with me. Tonight she sees it revealed. And my son-in-law. His face drains of color. The confidence he wrapped himself in falls away, leaving him exposed. He opens his mouth, but no words come. His glass slips from his fingers, shattering against the floor. The sound is sharp, final. He mutters, "This can't be right. This can't..." But the tremor in his voice betrays him. He looks around, desperate for support, but finds only eyes turned against him. I do not gloat. I do not raise my voice. I simply rest my hand on the second document, the paper warm beneath my palm, as if it carries the weight of all the sacrifices that birthed it. An old saying drifts into my mind. The river hides its depth until the flood. For years I let them think me shallow. Tonight they glimpse the depth. I thought the inheritance was the final revelation. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The shattered glass lies in fragments on the floor, wine bleeding across the tablecloth like spilled blood. No one moves to clean it. All eyes are fixed on my son-in-law, who now sits rigid, his face pale, his lips trembling with words he cannot string together. The inheritance document rests beside the house deed, undeniable proof of truths he never imagined. For years he painted me as a shadow, a man who contributed nothing. Tonight the papers speak louder than any accusation or defense. He finally finds his voice, but it cracks. It's a trick. He forged it. He couldn't. His words stumble over themselves, crumbling like bricks loosened from a wall. No, my wife whispers her first true words all night. Her tears streak her cheeks, but her voice is clear, unwavering. It's real. I've seen pieces of it. He just never wanted anyone to know. The room tilts. My daughter turns sharply toward her husband. "You knew about this," she demands. Her tone isn't soft, not wavering this time. It is sharp, almost accusing. He stutters, I didn't know anything." His hands flail, grasping at empty air, but his eyes betray him. For the first time tonight, fear has cracked him open, and everyone sees it. Relatives begin to murmur. Some shake their heads. Others glance at me with something between respect and shame. The truth has redrawn the map of this family, and my son-in-law no longer stands at its center. His mask slips further. Rage seeps back into him, but it is no longer arrogance. It is desperation. He slams his fist on the table, rattling the cutlery. So what? So he has money. It doesn't change who he is. He's still nothing. But the words ring hollow. No one believes him now. His attempt to wound me bounces back against the undeniable evidence lying between us. My granddaughter, silent until now, whispers just loud enough to be heard. "You're the one who's nothing." The innocence in her voice cuts sharper than any adult accusation. The room stills. My daughter looks at her child, then at her husband, and in that moment I see at the beginning of her realization. The smirk that once clung to his face is gone. His mask has shattered. What remains is the raw, frightened man beneath, exposed for all to see. There's an old saying, when the mask falls, the true face burns brighter than the sun. Tonight his mask lies in pieces, and the light it reveals blinds even him. I thought his humiliation would end here, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The room has reached its breaking point. The documents lie spread across the table like verdicts, their ink louder than any voice raised tonight. My son-in-law's denial echoes in the air, brittle and hollow, yet still he clings to it. His hands shake, his face flushed with desperation. I sit straighter in my chair. For too long, silence has been my shield. Tonight it becomes my weapon. I place my hand firmly on the folder, anchoring myself. Then slowly I lift my eyes to his. My voice comes out steady, low, but carrying across the room with the weight of years. You call me nothing, you call me burden, but everything you stand on this roof above your head, the chair beneath you, the food you eat was built by my hands, paid for by the sacrifices you sneer at. The papers on this table are not tricks, they are truth, and the truth does not bow to your arrogance. Gasps rise around me. My wife's tears spill anew, but this time her sobs are mixed with relief. My daughter covers her mouth, her eyes darting between me and her husband. She has never heard me speak like this, not with bitterness, but with undeniable clarity. My son-in-law shoves his chair back, the legs screeching against the floor. You think this makes you powerful? You think money changes who you are? You're weak. You've always been weak. His voice cracks on the last word, trembling more than he intends. I stand. The room tilts with the motion, every guest holding their breath. I didn't raise my voice. I don't need to. Calm is stronger than rage. Weak, I repeat softly. Weak is a man who hides behind insults. Weak is a man who humiliates others to feel tall. Weak is a man who builds nothing, yet tries to claim everything. His fists clench at his sides. His eyes dart around the room seeking support, but none comes. Even my daughter looks at him with something breaking in her gaze. Doubt, disappointment, the first seeds of disloyalty to him. I step closer to the table, my hand brushing the inheritance document. For years I stayed silent because I believed peace was worth the cost. But peace built on cruelty is not peace, it is prison. And tonight, this prison ends. The guests erupt in whispers, the sound like waves crashing. My wife grips the edge of the table, her shoulders shaking, but in her eyes I see something new. Pride, fragile but glowing. My granddaughter leans forward, her small face alight as though watching a hero step out of shadow. My son-in-law slams his palm against the wall, his voice rising in one last desperate attempt. You can't turn them against me. But I don't need to. His own arrogance has done that already. There is an old saying, when truth stands, lies collapse beneath it. Tonight, truth stands tall, and he is the one collapsing. I thought this confrontation would bring peace, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The echoes of my words linger in the air long after my mouth is closed. The room is still, as though the very walls are holding their breath. My son-in-law stands stiff by the wall, fists trembling, jaw locked. His chest rises and falls too quickly, the frantic rhythm of a man cornered. But no one moves to him. No one speaks in his defense. The silence is not for me this time, it is against him. My wife lowers her face into her hands, shoulders shaking, her tears no longer of fear but of release. For years she has borne the weight of keeping peace. Tonight she feels the burden lift, though its release comes with grief for all the years spent swallowing truth. My daughter stares at her husband wide-eyed, her lips parted but voiceless. The mask she's worn for him, loyal wife, obedient daughter, has cracked. She sees him now, not as the strong man he pretended to be, but as he is brittle, angry, desperate. Her gaze shifts to me, searching, and for the first time in years she looks at me, not with dismissal, but with dawning respect. The guests remain frozen in their seats. Some clutch their glasses as if afraid to shatter the stillness. Others bow their heads, unwilling to meet my eyes. Not from shame for me, but shame for themselves, for their silence earlier, for the complicity that allowed cruelty to spread unchecked. And in that silence, truth resounds louder than any shout. I sit again, my movements calm, deliberate. My hand brushes against the documents still spread across the table. They no longer feel like secrets. They feel like anchors holding me steady while the storm rages around me. My granddaughter leans close, her small voice trembling but firm. I told you, Grandpa, she whispers. Not yet. She smiles faintly, as though proud she helped me keep my silence until the right moment. I nod, resting a hand lightly on hers. Even in the quiet, her courage shines brighter than all the empty laughter from earlier. My son-in-law finally speaks, but his voice has shrunk. This changes nothing. His words are brittle, falling flat in the heavy quiet. No one believes him. His authority, once puffed with arrogance, has deflated into something pitiful. There's an old phrase from my village: when a drum splits, it makes no sound. No matter how hard you beat it, tonight his voice is that split drum, empty, powerless, drowned out by silence. The quiet in the room is not absence, it is judgment, and judgment has already been cast. I thought the silence would be the end, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The silence stretches on, thick and unrelenting. But silence cannot last forever. It begins to crack, and from its fractures voices emerge. It is my wife's sister who speaks first. Her voice is low, but it carries. We all knew, she says, eyes darting around the table. We all knew he was cruel. We just chose not to say it. Her words hang heavy in admission that makes several guests lower their heads. A cousin clears his throat next, glancing nervously at my son-in-law before speaking. I never believed him, not fully. The way he spoke to you, it wasn't right. Tonight proves it. His eyes land on me, steady now, no longer evasive. One by one, the murmurs grow into confessions. Some admit they turned away to keep peace. Others admit they feared his temper. My daughter's hands shake as she grips her chair. She finally speaks, her voice trembling, but loud enough for all to hear. I thought he was strong, she whispers. Her gaze fixes on her husband, whose face darkens with fury. But strength isn't what humiliates others. I see that now. Her words strike harder than any document. My son-in-law snaps his head toward her, his voice a hiss. You dare! But she doesn't let him finish. For the first time, she doesn't back down. Don't speak. The sharpness in her tone silences even him. The entire room feels the shift, the chain of loyalty snapping clean. My granddaughter squeezes my hand under the table, her small fingers firm with quiet triumph. She doesn't need to speak. Her courage has already been proven. My wife lifts her head, her eyes still wet but burning with clarity. She looks at her daughter, then at me. Her voice shakes, but it carries the force of decades behind it. Enough lies, enough cruelty. This ends tonight. The room breathes those words in. Aunts, cousins, neighbors, everyone feels the weight of the reckoning. Eyes turn on my son-in-law, and for the first time he is not the center of control but the object of judgment. He sputters, trying to claw back authority. You're all fools. Don't you see? He's manipulating you, But no one listens. His voice scrapes against a wall of rejection. He is speaking into a void, and the void no longer echoes back. There's a saying, when the tree falls, the birds scatter. Tonight, the tree is my son-in-law, and the flock of loyalty that once perched on his shoulders has flown away. I thought their reckoning would finish him. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The tide has turned. Where once my son-in-law commanded the room with arrogance, now he stands alone, his words dissolving into air that no one breathes in. The reckoning has stripped him bare. All that remains is the echo of his cruelty and the fragments of a reputation crumbling before his very eyes. My wife leans back in her chair, exhausted, her hands trembling as she dabs her eyes. There is pain etched into her face, pain for years lost, for silence endured, but there is also relief. The burden of pretending has been lifted. For the first time in decades, she no longer has to protect him at my expense. My daughter sits frozen, staring at her husband, as though she cannot reconcile the man beside her with the mask he wore for so long. Slowly, she removes her hand from his arm, the smallest gesture yet powerful as a declaration. Her silence no longer shields him. Relatives murmur among themselves, their voices no longer whispers, but judgments. He went too far. Shameful. We should have spoken sooner. Each word chips further at his crumbling facade. I stand. Not in anger, not in triumph, simply in truth. My voice is quiet, but the quiet carries. You called me a burden, I say, looking directly at him. But tonight everyone has seen where the real weight lies. A burden is not the man who sacrificed in silence. A burden is the man who poisons his own family with cruelty. He tries to respond, but no words come. His mouth opens and closes like a drowning man's gasp, but the water has already risen over him. I walk toward the door, my footsteps steady. Behind me I hear chairs scrape as others rise, not to follow him, but to follow me. The shift is unmistakable. The balance of power has changed. On the threshold, I pause. The night air drifts in cool and sharp, carrying the scent of rain. I take a breath, tasting freedom, and turn back just once. My wife watches me with weary eyes, but nods, her chin trembling. My granddaughter beams faintly, her small hand clutching her mother's. My daughter cannot meet my gaze, not yet, but I see the war inside her, and I know time will finish what tonight has begun. As for him, he sits collapsed in his chair, the documents before him like mirrors he cannot bear to face. There's a saying I once heard from an old fisherman. When the net breaks, the fish learns too late where it swam. Tonight, his net of lies has torn apart, and he finally sees the truth too late. I step into the night, the cool air washing over me. For the first time in years, I feel lighter. The betrayal has closed, not with revenge shouted, but with truth revealed. I thought this closure was the end of the story. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The night air cools my skin as I step outside. Behind me, the hum of voices rises, but it no longer belongs to him. For once, the weight of the evening does not press down on my chest. It lifts, leaving me lighter than I have felt in years. I walk slowly down the path past the garden my wife once tended with careful hands. The roses droop in the dark, their petals heavy with dew. And I think of how often she bent to nurture them even when her back ached. She gave so much quietly, just as I did. Tonight, her silence broke, and in its place, truth bloomed. I pause under the porch light, letting its glow fall over me. For decades, I believed peace could be bought by swallowing humiliation, by bearing insults without reply. I see now that silence can shield for a while, but silence also feeds cruelty. Peace is not built on silence, it is built on truth. My mind drifts to my daughter. Her eyes tonight were torn, conflicted, yet when she pulled her hand away from her husband's arm, it was the first step. She will wrestle with the pieces of her loyalty, but truth has a way of finding cracks to seep into. One day, she will understand the depth of what was sacrificed for her. And my granddaughter, small, trembling, yet braver than many adults in that room, her whispered warning, her fierce eyes, her quiet strength. The future belongs to her kind, those who see through lies, who know when to speak and when to wait. As for him, my son-in-law, he is left inside, sitting among broken glass and broken pride. His voice no longer holds power. Perhaps he will rage, perhaps he will plot. But tonight, the foundation beneath him has shattered. The burden he tried to hang on me has been returned to its rightful shoulders. I think of an old proverb my father once told me, truth walks slowly, but it always arrives. Tonight, truth arrived, not with thunder, but with paper and silence, with patience and endurance. I turn my face upward. The sky is dark stars hidden behind drifting clouds, but I know they are there. Hidden things remain waiting for the right time to shine, just like me. I exhale long and slow and whisper into the night, it's over. Not revenge, not triumph, just closure. The betrayal has run its course. What remains is family fractured, wounded, but not beyond healing. Forgiveness will not come quickly, but it will come because time and truth heal more deeply than anger ever could. And as I step off the porch, I know I am no longer the silent burden. I'm the man who endured, who revealed, who survived. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched you, please subscribe and continue with the next story in the playlist.